Okay, we're gonna set to current score to 1, then 2, as you can see over here. Okay, as you can see, we are increasing score. So without furthering delay, let's dive into this topic. Select the canvas, right click on it. Okay, right click on it and go to UI and then legacy and then text. Okay, and select the text F2 focus on. Okay, we're gonna resize this text. Firstly we're gonna choose a color, so go to color field and choose it white, something like that. Okay, and we're gonna increase the font size. Firstly we're gonna select this stretch tool. Okay, and hold down alt on your keyboard, so it will resize from the center, as you can see. And what we're gonna do, we're gonna make the font size a little bit bigger, and we're gonna select normal to bold. Okay, font style normal to bold, we're gonna select like 50, I guess. Fine, pretty fine. And alignment to select, choose both of this center. Okay, and go over to rect transform. Okay, rect transform of this text. Okay, select this one, and hold down alt on your keyboard and select the top one, so it will stretch with screen size. As you can see, it will fit according to the screen size. As you can see, it will expand or shrink like that with screen, so it will be always stay in the top. Okay, it will be always stay in the top. So we're gonna resize this something like, okay, okay, what we're gonna call this, something like score. Okay, we're gonna make a score manager script. Okay, for this, by we're gonna set text to 0 in the first. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna firstly go to pipe prefab. Okay, pipe prefab. Firstly we're gonna go to pipe prefab, and we're gonna add another game object. Okay, we're gonna add another game object. So go over to pipe prefab, right click on that. Okay, create an empty child game object. Okay, create an empty child game object. You can rename that something like that, so I'm gonna leave it as it is. So I'm gonna add a box collider to this game object. Okay, so add component, hit the add component and box collider. Okay, box collider 2D, and resize like a strip. Okay, I'm gonna resize this to fill, and make it too much thick. Okay, make it thick. Thickness should be too much like this. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna tag this. Okay, we're gonna tag this game object as something like point or something like that. Okay, we're gonna call this something like strip. Okay, we're gonna call this something like strip like that. Okay, strip, something like that, strip. Okay, strip, and we're gonna tag this as a strip. Okay, a strip, or you can say something like that. We're gonna call this something like point. Okay, we're gonna call this point, and we're gonna assign this game object as point tag. So add tag and hit the plus icon and call it point. Okay, and save it and head again to this point game object and assign that tag which is selected untag. So we're gonna assign point tag. Now we have tagged this. So also we need to do is trigger over here. As you can see, we're gonna set it to true. We're gonna check this, means we are setting it to true. So what we're gonna do, firstly we're gonna check. Okay, so what we're gonna do, firstly we're gonna check. So we're gonna make another script. Okay, head over to assets to make things simple. Right click, create C# script, something like the bird collision, something like that. Okay, bird collision. Okay, bird collision, and hit enter. Okay, and hit enter. Just wait for to compile. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna attach this script, double click it to open up in Visual Studio and head again to Unity. Okay, and what we need to do, select the bird and attach this bird collision script to bird. Okay, so just wait for to compile, and just wait for to compile. And what we're gonna do, we're gonna select the bird and we're gonna attach this bird collision script to our bird. Okay, we're gonna so select the bird. Okay, select the bird, select, sorry, select the bird and drag the bird collision script to add component section. Okay, double click it to open up in Visual Studio. Before that, as you can see, this became plus sign. Okay, so what we have to do, go over to overrides, then apply all. It will change in the prefab as well, but prefab means the copy of that game object. So double click it to open up in Visual Studio. What are we gonna do, we're gonna delete this pre-generated code start and update function, and also these two namespaces in the top, we don't need that. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna use an inbuilt function. Okay, it's called on trigger inter 2D. That function called whenever we trigger or collide with something like that. Okay, as you know, we set the point as a point tag game object. So we set it to each trigger. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna use this function. Okay, on trigger inter 2D function, sorry, on trigger inter 2D function. Basically this function get trigger whenever we trigger with something. We can extract info by going to this other, we can extract info what we hit or what we trigger it with, something like name tag. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna print out debug. Okay, debug.log, we're gonna print out them that game object name. So firstly we have to go to other, we can extract info by going to this other, then transform of that game object, and we're gonna print out the name. Okay, what we hit or what we trigger it with. As you know we will trigger with this point. Okay, if we pass through that, okay, we will trigger with that point. So firstly what we are doing, this on trigger inter 2D function get trigger whenever we trigger with something. So firstly we are printing out message over here, as you can see debug.log. Firstly going to other, then going to that game object whatever we trigger it with, we going to that game object transform, and then dot, we are printing out the name. As you can see, control S on your keyboard and head again to Unity. So select the console. Okay, select the console. If you can find the console, you just have to do, go to window in the top and then general, and you will able to find the console. Control shift plus C, I guess, to bring up instantly the console tab. So select the console tab and hit play. Okay, so whenever we trigger with that point, the point, so if I open up the pipe prefab one more time, as you can see, if I select the point game object, as you can see, we tag it as a point. Okay, and we set is triggered to true, as you can see. Okay, so if we select the console and if we hit play, okay, if we hit play and if we pass through that point game object, okay, as we know we set that to is trigger. So in the bird collision script, on trigger inter function will get called. As you know, whenever we calling that function, okay, whenever we calling that function, we just printing out the name of the game object. Okay, so just, I guess I just messed, just wait. So if we hit play once again, we will able to see. Okay, we will able to see. Just wait for to compile. Just wait for to compile. And so I'm gonna make the bird, if I go to bird, I'm gonna make the jump height something lower. So if we pass through that game object point, we will able to see the name object. As you can see in the console, point name getting print out. Okay, point name getting print out. So instead of printing out message, what we're gonna do, firstly we're gonna check. Okay, firstly we're gonna check if, okay, if other, okay, other dot tag. Okay, whatever we trigger with, we're gonna say, okay, we're gonna say if that game object has tag point. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna add score to our current score. So as you know, this function on trigger inter 2D function get trigger whenever we trigger with something, and over here we are checking if that game object whatever we trigger it with, if that game object has tag point is equals to point, as you can see. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna increase score by 1 unit. Okay, we will pass through that game object between those pipes, okay, spaces. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna make an integer value. Okay, we're gonna say it something like current score, and we're gonna set it to by default to 0. Okay, So what we're gonna do, we're gonna make it public so we can see in the inspector. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna make it public, and with the variable type will be integer. Integer are whole numbers 1 2 3 4, as you know. And we're gonna call this something like current score. You have to name also, and by default we're going to set it to 0, as we know when we start the game current score we will have 0. So you can set directly to 0, as you know. You also don't need to set by default. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna increase the current score by 1 unit whenever we pass through that point game object. As we know, we assign it that game object as a point, and we will trigger with that game object. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna increase the current score by 1 unit. Okay, so what we have to do, we have to type this. Okay, current score plus equal 1, or current score plus 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 plus, something like this. Okay, this also mean that. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna leave it as it is, like this. Okay, so we are adding by 1 unit, as you can see, to our current score. So control s on your keyboard and head again to unity. You will able to see whenever we pass through that point game object or trigger with that point game object, we are increasing by 1 unit. Okay, we are increasing our current score by 1 unit. We will able to see an empty field, sorry, a field of integer will appear in the but collision script. As you can see, current score by default we set it to 0, as you can see. So what if we play? Okay, if we play and we pass through that point game object or trigger with that point game object, so we are just adding 1 unit to our current score. Okay, so you will able to see that if we pass through that point or trigger with that point of game object. I'm gonna make the jump height a little smaller, something like 5 to make easy little. So if we pass through that, we will able to see that. Okay, so as you can see, current score became 1 and current score became 2 whenever we pass the third number. As you can see, current score just increasing by 1 unit. Okay, as you can see, current score is 4. So what we gonna do, instead of showing this over here, we're gonna show it in this text. Okay, we're gonna show it in the this text. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna make a score manager script. Okay, to make things simple. So what are we gonna do, so go over to hierarchy. Okay, right click or hit the plus icon, create empty game object, name that game object to score manager, something like that. Okay, it will keep track of how many it will keep track of linking between the text and the our current score. So score manager, and okay, so name that score manager, go to transform, right click and reset. Okay, and drag it in the top so we can see it in the hierarchy. And we're gonna add a score manager script to this score manager game object. So what we're gonna do, go to scripts. Okay, right click, create C# script, and we're gonna call this something manager score manager, and hit enter, and double click it to open up in Visual Studio. Okay, double click it to open up in Visual Studio. We're gonna add this score manager script. Okay, we're gonna add this score manager script to our score manager game object. Okay, it will keep track of linking between our text and our current score. Okay, so what we need, we also need this text. Okay, in the top, as you can see, we set it 0. So we need this text. Okay, and we're gonna set it to our current score. Okay, we're gonna set it to our current score. So what we're gonna do, uh, so if we go to score manager, so we need this text. If we go to canvas and if we select the score, as you can see, we need this text. Okay, as you can see, this is an text element. So what we're gonna do, go to score manager. Okay, score manager game object, and attach the score manager script to score manager game object, and double click it to open up in Visual Studio. So we need this text. So this is an UI element. Okay, so what we need to do, we need to use this using Unity engine. We have to include this namespace using Unity engine. dot ui. Okay, you have to use these namespaces. Okay, because that is the text over there is an ui element, so that's why we have to use this using unity engine dot ui namespace. And we're gonna create an empty field of text. Okay, and we're gonna drag that text into that text field. So we're gonna make it public so we can say see in the inspector. Okay, so public, we're gonna make it public. The component type is text. Okay, text, and we're gonna call it, you have to call it something like, you have to name it some. So we're gonna call something like current score txt or text txt, something like that. Okay, so control s on your keyboard and head again to unity. In the score manager you will able to see an empty field of text component will appear. So what we need to do, we need to drag this text to that field, so we will have the link of this text, and then we can we going to set the value. Okay, we're gonna set the value. So just wait for to compile, and wait for to compile, and you will able to see over here. Okay, as you can see current score text which says none. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna drag this score into that field, this text. Okay, so and double click it to, now we have the reference of this text. Okay, now we can communicate like that. So we're gonna remove the start function, we don't need this. Okay, we're gonna do it update function. So firstly what we're gonna do, we also need the bird. Okay, we also need the bird script. Okay, we also need the bird script, sorry, bird collision script. So as you can see over here, we set current score by default 0. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna set this. Okay, we're gonna set this current score text to our, that we need to show up in the text element. So we also need this script. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna go over to score manager script. Okay, score manager script, and we're gonna create an empty field of bird collision script. Then we're gonna drag that bird collision script to that empty field of bird collision script. So we're gonna make it public so we will able to see in inspector. Okay, so we're gonna make this public. Okay, public, the type of the component will be bird collision. Okay, bird collision. Okay, bird collision, as you can see, and you have to name it. You can name it any like that, anything like that. So I'm gonna name it something like bird collision. Okay, control s on your keyboard and head again to unity. You will able to see another component. Okay, which says bird collision, which will be empty. So what we need to do, we need to drag that bird collision script to this that empty field. As we know, we attach the bird collision script to our bird, so we need to drag the bird into that slot. Okay, so what we need to do, as you can see bird collision which says none bird collision. So what we need to do, we need to drag the bird collision script to this field. So as we know, we attach that bird collision script to our bird, so we're gonna drag the bird over there, so we will have the link. So drag the bird into that field. Now we have the link of bird collision script as well as that this text reference. So what we're gonna do, in the update function we're gonna do it, because update function get call every single frame, and we're gonna set it every single frame. We're gonna keep track of how many score we have. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna go over to bird collision. Okay, bird collision, if we head over to bird collision script, as you can see current score is 0, but whenever we pass through that point game object, we are adding by 1 unit to our current score. So what we're gonna do, firstly and we're gonna go to this score text, we're gonna set this score text. Okay, so what we have to do, we have to type this current score. Okay, current score text dot text. Basically this means, oh okay, just wait, I just mess. So what we gonna do, so current score dot current score txt dot text. Basically this means this over here, if we go to score this text. Okay, and we're gonna set this text is our equal to current score. So as we know, current score will be 0 when we start the game or in the start. Okay, the current score will be 0, so the text over here will be 0 because we're gonna set directly this text to our current score. So if we head over to over here and we're gonna set directly current score dot text. Okay, we're gonna set but collision. Okay, we're gonna go over to but collision script and we're gonna access the current score over there, current score, and we're gonna set. Okay, as you know, current score text means this text over here, this text over here. Okay, and we are setting equal to this our current score. We are firstly going to this but collision script and we are accessing this current score parameter because we made it public, so that's why we are able to access this current score. By default, as you can, we set to 0, so the current score dot text will be 0 in this start because the current score by default we set it to 0. And whenever we pass through that point game object, we are just adding current score by 1. So if the current score became 1, okay, so the text current score text will be 1. Okay, because we are directly equal to but collision dot current score, we are directly setting it. As you can see, it's red line. As you know, this text over here is a string, but this but collision dot current score, as you can see, if we go over to but collision script, as you can see, current score is an integer value, but score dot current score text, as this is a string and this is an integer. So we also need to convert this integer to string, so it will be equal to this. Okay, current score. So what we have to do, we have to use this a function, okay, dot to string. Now it will convert this integer value to our this string. Okay, so as we know, in the start we are setting current score to 0. Okay, so the text over here will be 0 because we are directly setting it. Okay, and we are doing it update function, and update function checks every single, means update function get call every single just we are updating every single frame, so this will be accurate. So that's why we are doing it update function. Okay, we are setting our current score text, we are setting our but collision dot current score. Firstly, we are going to this but collision script and we are accessing this current score. Okay, and we are setting it directly, as you can see. Okay, okay, I hope you get the idea. And control s on your keyboard and head again to unity. You will able to see whenever whenever we pass through that point game object. Okay, trigger with that point game object, we will able to see the text over here will be 1. By default it will be 0 because we are in this start, we are saying current score to 0, and current score dot text over here we setting it to current score. As we know, current score is 0 in this start, so the text over here will be 0 in this start. But whenever we pass through or trigger that point game object, okay, trigger with that point game object, we're increasing the current score by 1. So the over here, okay, if I'm gonna make it little lower jump height, I'm gonna make it something like 5, and if we play, so current score will be 1 whenever we pass through that point or trigger with that point game object. Okay, so as you can see, it's become 1 because we are directly setting current score dot text in equal to, we are setting to our this current score. Okay, current score integer value. So I hope you get the idea. If you did, so give a thumbs up. Okay, if you are new to my channel, then subscribe it for future tutorials. And if you want to support me, you can support me on patreon.com. I have link in the description. And lastly, thanks for watching this video.